little Awesome. Done. Did you like my little intro?
John, I loved it, and it brought back so many memories of my childhood. The way you used to tune in, not just the radio, but also I had when I first grew up, had a black and white TV, little mini one that was like plastic encased, and you had the two dials on the top to try.
Oh, yeah.
I
used to love tuning that in. I used to love it. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
No, pleasure. So for those watching, I just want to go through the docket, so to speak, what we're going to speak about. And then if you could introduce yourself, give a little bit of context, that would be great. So 3-4 things we're going to talk about. So these agentic browsers are super interesting. ChatGPT have just released Atlas. I've been using Comet by Perplexity. So I think that's going to be really interesting. Secondly, I just want to talk about all the AI regulations as well. They seem to differ a little bit, US, Europe, China. So just kind of dive into that. And then also we're seeing a lot of redundancy from firms like Meta after buying startups, high growths and stuff. So it'll be interesting to kind of get your take on what's going on there. And then we can have a little look at just like at the Middle East. I know you're kind of quite knowledgeable on that. You've done a lot of stuff there. We're seeing a lot of more jobs being created in the UAE and Saudi specifically. So let's give our kind of take on that, and then we'll,
fantastic.
Grab a coffee.
Sounds like a plan.
So great. Do you want to give a quick intro? Like what you've been up to and.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose for those people who are tuning in who may not know who I am or what I do, I've worked in the world of AI now for the past 15 years. I have a global patent in AI under my name, and over the last 15 years have been involved in setting up and creating systems from scratch. So before this brave new world that everyone encountered 2-3 years ago, and it started dominating our headlines, it's been my life for longer than my children have been alive. And certainly, feels that with the different AI systems that I create and build and design, they're almost like an addition to the family. But yeah, my work's taken me all the way around the world, as you mentioned. Really deep experience of UAE, Dubai, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as well as working across UK, Europe, and the States.
Nice. Thanks so much for that. So what's your take on these browsers?
Yeah.
So the browser, I want to just share a few stats. I was actually going to share on. I was going to share this actually. I mean, if for those of you that haven't seen, and I think it's only currently available on Mac, but that's kind of how it looks. This is not a Mac. This is a Windows. So I haven't got the browser downloaded on here. But super interesting. Some of the stats are, and I'm going to unshare. So 800 million weekly users of ChatGPT, apparently. All of them could use Atlas. None of them, who knows what's going to happen. Chrome dominates, Google Chrome. I use Chrome as well as the others. Maybe people have lots of browsers. Maybe that's actually the answer. Apparently 71.9% of the globe are using Chrome. So what's your take? Have you used it? Do you think it's going to change things?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because the evolution they're going through was one which was always going to come about, because you look at how agentic systems are being created, and even LLMs in terms of massive data. And where's that always existed in the past? Search companies. So it was always a natural stage that it was going to start to take over in this way, in terms of having its own integrated AI into a web browsing experience. The difference for Atlas, for those people that haven't tried it, is that it's very much a shift from AI's tool that we all know at the moment, where it's more of an ambient layer across a whole digital workflow. So unlike Claude or other extensions, this is going to be a lot more native. And the reason being is that the AI is going to see what you see. It's going to learn your own individual patterns as you search. It's going to automate repetitive search. So there's going to be a lot of cross-platform tasks without having to switch context, which is one of the key changes. Now, what does that mean from an impact perspective? Well, if you have a look at it, actually, it's going to change knowledge work into more strategic decision-making roles. So particularly as we're talking about recruitment, we're going to start thinking that junior research analysts, data gatherers, and report compilers are going to face compression. That's going to be one of the issues they've got. Whereas the senior roles are going to be focused more on judgment, stakeholder management, creative problem solving, and those are going to become more valuable as standout skills. And already I've seen some reports saying that kind of productivity gains from this evolution are going to be around about 30 to 40% in terms of information intensive roles. So big implications. I think one of the first things that companies should be doing is looking at redesigning some of that job architecture now. So it's not a case of, is AI going to replace this role? It's going to be more a case of now, because of the involvement of the search being hand in glove, what does this role become when AI handles 60% of current tasks?
So for example, I don't know, let's say you are, you want to research a new market, design a project, something like that. Maybe you'd go to McKinsey usually or something like that. Whereas now you can dive on and what would you say? Like, hey, take control of my browser, go do a deep search on the, let's say the AI market in the UAE, who are the key players, size, opportunity, whatever, all of that kind of stuff. You'd probably pay, God knows how much you pay McKinsey for. So as the chief strategy officer or the founder, CEO, whatever, is that what you would envisage doing versus calling up McKinsey or one of your junior people? And
very, very much so. I mean, the key thing is what it's doing is it's amplifying the role of human judgments. So it's actually looking now at speeding up and breaking down information and information at speed, which is great, and then actually dissecting through that data and through that noise. And now it's actually going to be involving CEOs, founders, etc., having more of that kind of human judgment based on the data that's presented to them. But importantly, it's going to learn as they learn. It's going to evolve as their business evolves, as opposed to us having to go back, access a third-party tool, give it a prompt, say, no, you've got to make sure you operate in these particular ways. Literally, it's you've got the person sat with you, which is the AI, almost your digital twin, that's learning as you learn. And then you'll actually start to find that it's finding new trends that exist within business or markets before the likes of the Big Four or McKinsey, etc., would have found them out, because they're obviously relying on some form of historical reporting when it comes through from financials, for example.
Yeah. Two questions I get a lot is can you really trust it? You see a lot of conversation around the data's not quite right, it's not quite accurate. People blindly follow it and realize later that they've completely, it's like, of course the AI is right, kind of thing, So yeah, thoughts on that. Secondly, is there's a lot of folks that are like, this is great, but I've got no idea how to do it. So it's a question. Maybe start with question one. Is just the factfulness, and even that's proper English. AI can help me with that. Of the information and what would you advise that people do? What's the best practice for making sure that things are correct?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to always bear in mind is that the AI wants to make us happy. It doesn't necessarily concern about factual accuracy. So depending how you're engaging with it and how the type of prompts, type of questions you're giving it will influence the responses that you get back. So to really strike at the heart of the question of, can you trust the output of AI? No. I certainly, as a former police sergeant, would I be saying that that's something that's going to stand up in a court of law as evidential and passing reasonable doubt? Then no, not at all. So always take everything with a pinch of salt. And this is where that human judgment comes back in. So, what it is good at, if you give it data which you know is real, and then you're asking it to process it for you, perfect, because you've controlled that flow. It's a bit like making a sandwich at home or buying a shop bought one. When you make it at home, what's going into it, the ingredients, where things have come from. You buy something the shop bought, you're taking a bit of a chance. So that's the kind of difference between the two. So yeah, I'd always treat it with a pinch of salt.
All right. To add on to that, you can also, for those that don't know, you can plug in your own data, right? So you can give it access to Google Drive, Dropbox. You can attach stuff. So you can use your own proprietary data, which you trust, it's your data, and it will do a really good job at analyzing it, interrogating it, and so forth.
And I've had businesses ask me in terms of, when looking at that, is it safe to share your own data? The way I'd always liken it is, well, if you're stood in a pub and you're going to be talking about something which is so sensitive and confidential to your business, with the likelihood that someone who's a competitor may overhear, would you really do it? So, again, use that same kind of judgment with the data that you're sharing through one of the tools. But also, you can anonymize the data. You can still have the same figures there, but as opposed to calling sales forecast, you can call it bananas. The system won't understand what it's doing. But also, interestingly now, there's an emergence that's coming through of small language models that obviously people can have internally within their own organization, as opposed to just relying on the large language models, which have taken all the headlines and all of the news.
But is that expensive? So if like an SME want to implement their own?
Yeah, it can be. I mean, at the end of the day, what you're talking about are tokens and GPUs, and there will always be that kind of transfer of a cost-benefit analysis. If you've got something which is very confidential, top secret, but you want to lean on AI to help, well, then you'd probably be able to offset and justify the GPU costs. But if you've got something that's particularly high volume, repetitive, it's not commercially sensitive, it makes sense to use one of the bigger players for that.
Yeah. Okay. And then just two more questions on the agentic browsers. So people are a bit reluctant, I think, to give it access to everything. So for it to work really well, I guess you're giving access to your email, calendar, credit card details, the whole thing, right? And if you're going to use it as your EA to book flights and accommodation, where are we with that? Are there some vulnerabilities? Can it get hacked? What would you do?
Yeah, I think, and again, I put my former employment hat on in terms of the police. Would I openly share everything with it? No. You cherry pick the areas that you're happy to engage with and build up that experience. I'm not going to say trust, but build up that experience with the platform or the tool. For me personally, would I give an AI access to my emails? No. Personal choice. I like to manage my own emails, and I like to bring the human interaction forward into what I'm doing. Other people may differ and say, no, I'm happy for AI to read, understand, and reply to my emails. Personal choice.
Okay, love that. And for those that have no idea how to even start to use this in their business, so there are a few things that they could kick off with. I mean, for me, I just say go try stuff. But there are a lot of people where they're not using it. They can't imagine using it. Or they're the classic, I asked it one question, it wasn't quite right, it doesn't work well.
Yeah, and you do see that that experience of, as I say, people that will try it once and then just walk away, but also that fear factor that people have, where they have the fear of missing out, but also that apprehension about, well, how do I now engage with it? For me, there's always two key questions that people should ask. One, what are our priorities as a business where AI could help to deliver against those? And then the second one is, are we ready for it? Because certain organizations just may not be ready to introduce whole-scale AI in. I mean, one of the big areas that I see now isn't in particular about, we want people to write or code AI because of the tools that are out there. It's more around strategy and governance. Can we have people that can come in and actually help us as a business look at what we're doing, how we operate, where there may be some efficiencies where we buy in, or do we build on top of, or do we build our own? But also it's that readiness. What's the appetite within the business? Is it the right time to do it? I think invariably and ultimately, any business that completely shies away from AI will be found out over time. I think it naturally fits in just in the same way that we had Web 1.0, Web 2.0, in terms of, okay, we now have websites, we now have social channels. As a matter of course in business, it's going to be exactly the same with AI.
100%. And for the individual, it's so important. I can't tell you how many hiring managers, clients, whatever, they're looking for people that are, obviously it depends on what job you're doing, right? How technical you get with these things, but they're just people, they're looking for people that are not standing still, trying stuff, and just using these things and can talk about it. And you don't have to go crazy deep and, be able to tell people, I don't know, the price of compute and tokens and that. But just, like, what are the tools you're using? Like, what have you tried? Even just as basic as that. So,
definitely. And I think of it. Sorry, I don't mean to.
No, go for it.
I completely agree, and I think of it very much about developing almost like a T-shaped AI fluency. So if you can have deep expertise in your area, plus a broad awareness in terms of what some of the AI tools across different functions are that you can leverage, that's the best thing that you can do currently as an employee, director, business owner.
Love that. Let's move on to regulation. According to AI, I used Perplexity using Grok 4. So if this is not factually correct, you can blame Grok. 50% of countries now have some form of AI regulation as of October 25. So just kind of a quick snapshot.
Yeah.
Where are we in terms of like regulation, compliance, ethics, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, we've got three key global markets who are all starting to diverge in terms of AI regulation. So we've got the US, we've got the EU, and we've got China. So whilst there are lots of other countries that have forms of regulations, these are kind of like the top three at the top table, and where are they going and in what direction? Now, a lot of it is coming through in terms of compliance requirements, cross-border hiring, operational complexity, but it comes down to almost like a cultural barometer, really, for all three in terms of how they're doing it. Now, the interesting thing is that the EU is actually leading the way in terms of the AI Act. Now, the EU has taken a lot more of a risk-based framework. So it's actually looking that you've got to conform in terms of assessments for high-risk systems. The US has gone, as opposed to looking at kind of agnostic, it's got a lot more sector-specific regulation. So, and voluntary frameworks, which you'd almost expect with their market economy. Now, the problem is that's created fragmentation, which again, you could argue is, again, part of the US culture at the moment, wider. But then what you actually look at in terms of China is they've mandated algorithms and algorithmic registration and content control. So what they've actually looked at is prioritizing the forms of social stability. Now, again, you've got European precaution, American innovation, Chinese societal leadership. Now, the interesting thing for multinationals is they're having to sail this ship between all three, as well as other countries. And this is where AI governance really is starting to come into its own. I look at some of the work that I do, with like the Global Esports Federation around governance and sitting on one of their committees. And it's a lot more now about, actually, let's look at where the data is coming from. Let's look at how it's being used. Let's look at how that aligns to our own business growth and objectives versus do we use tool A or tool B? So governance is a lot more of the key deciding factor for multinationals, because what we're going to start seeing, I think, from recruitment is a surge in AI ethics officers, for example. in terms of how are we running it ourselves internally, looking at compliance specialists, legal professionals who can have that kind of foot in both camps, data protection, accountability, employment law. So I think it's the way that the global landscape is changing is creating a whole new area of working practice that will start to come in. And again, how are people going to respond to that strategically? How are they going to deal with that kind of regulatory modular building, essentially, looking at AI systems and swappable compliance layers based on where they are
Yeah, it'd be
geographically.
interesting. Yeah, it'd be interesting. How about, so I agree with the new jobs created are going to be super interesting. In terms of innovation, Europe's always been leading on regulation, right?
Yeah.
And you think about can you name and no large tech firm has ever started in Europe, right? I mean, I think the Mag 7, it's all been US. Obviously, there's massive Chinese firms as well. So is any of this gonna, do you think, hinder again, like the ability of, or even the desire of these firms to want to grow and build in Europe or China or America? How do you see that kind of panning out?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing, you always hear Silicon Valley banded around, and but how people wish to replicate Silicon Valley. And we look here in the UK itself and the corridor between Oxford and Cambridge, and some of the initiatives that are coming in there, which need to be applauded. However, what they're trying to do is replicate Silicon Valley, and ultimately that tells you something, which is, okay, you can have the idea, you can start something in the UK or Europe, but ultimately you need to head out west, or now east, to really make it happen. And the reason why I mention east, is, as you alluded to at the start of our talk, was around the GCC. It's not just the UAE, but also Saudi Arabia, in terms of the national priority that they're placing on AI is akin to traditional industries that they've worked in. That's the level and gravitas. So you're almost getting like a Silicon Valley split now, where it's, do you go west or do you go east into the GCC?
Yeah. Well, as we're on the GCC, let's just kind of dive into that, because I think what you're seeing, and certainly what I'm seeing, is talent's very mobile, right?
Yes.
And there's a big pull and push. So if you're in the UK, you're trying to build an AI firm, whatever it might be, and your competition for talent is all over the place. I don't really believe this stat or not, so there's a big debate on it, but they said about 16,500 millionaires have left the UK since January. Now, these are not all tech AI folks, but it's a bit of a story of a lot of these people probably are building businesses somewhere, or they're choosing to build their businesses elsewhere. The UAE is the number one destination. Saudi's interesting. It's very easy to get visas. They're welcoming people into their country. They want to grow and stuff like that. So that's a trend I'm seeing. And as a little litmus test, just to give you an idea. So maybe pre-COVID, we did a search in the UAE, and maybe 1 or 2 out of 10 people would be interested in chatting to us about moving. We're doing stuff there right now, and I'd say 8 out of 10 people, not just in the UK, but all over Europe. Forget the US, because they still have to pay tax there. But most people are very open to moving and thinking about where they want to build their life and career. So do you see that continuing? Is that a real trend, or is this kind of a momentary thing?
I think it's more than a trend. I think this is the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. Having worked in Dubai and the UAE and Saudi Arabia, and seeing the approach that those countries are placing on AI, this isn't simply a snapshot in time or a trend that will run for 5-10 years and then drop off. This is a real meaningful national agenda and priority, in terms of not just looking at, okay, can we bring the talent in? Can we offer visas so inventors and AI engineers can come in, even though they may have been trained overseas in MIT, for example. What you're also looking at is how they're engaging with their own youth in the countries and training them up in AI now proactively. How they're looking at initiatives to train up Emirati in terms of being prompt engineers. So there's a massive concerted movement that's happening. And I think what it's going to do is really set the tone and the pace for the next 50, 75 years. So, it's quite significant in what's happening. And, now, as a AI founder, depending which type of sector you want to go into, it really is that choice between, well, do you go to America or do you go to the GCC? And it's meaningful. And as you say, you look at the Revolut founder, moved over to the UAE not that long ago, from the UK. So I think the markets there are shifting in a real positive way because of the importance that governments and leadership have given towards AI.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. And one thing I like there as well, and obviously the way the countries are structured and government, the leadership and stuff, they're able to do this, but long-term planning, they're investing for the long term. They're able to. It's interesting. It looks like it's starting to pay back. I was reading a stat the other day. I do love my stats at the moment. That Saudi feel that it could contribute $135 billion by 2030 to their GDP, 12.4% of GDP. Very interesting. The other thing I would say as well, and being recruiting in these countries, is because of the tax-free environment, it's very difficult to get people out.
Yeah.
Unless you forget the money, it's fine, but when you move there, I mean, if you're coming from the UK, you're like 45-50% off the bat. If you're coming from London, living costs are about the same. You get a bit of an uptick as well. So if you're trying to get someone out of there into the UK, it's very difficult because they suddenly become extremely expensive. And so that's one thing. Second thing is I'm seeing also again from the UK here is a lot of young people, they come out of university or school and they're like, the thing about the UK is, you want to, it's like you want to buy a property, it's this thing ingrained in us. And you look at the average price of property and a lot of young people can't even imagine, earning enough to even say, to save for the deposit and stuff. So I'm seeing, and I think this trend will continue, they're choosing to go and build their career in somewhere like the UAE where there's a lot of jobs and they can earn tax-free. Now obviously the market's smaller. There's like 3 million people in the UAE. They want to double it to 6. So obviously these markets are smaller, but they are recruiting. And there's many other countries, if we look at Europe, where it's a little bit more depressed. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing there. Super interesting. Let's finish. I just want to finish off with some of the recent Meta stuff. So a lot of stuff that they've announced 600 redundancies in their AI division just last week. There's been a few others as well, and a lot of these are coming from firms that they have acquired. So what is that? Again, is that a general trend? Are you finding that they are buying these startups, always planning on getting rid of most of the folks, or is that just an outlier?
No, it's very much how the market's moving now. We've moved away from traditional acqui-hires where they'd look at the entire organization, not just the C-suite, want to bring them all in. It's more now about capability captures. So Meta, Google, Microsoft, what they're looking at doing are acquiring AI startups for the models or the techniques that they've got, then integrate the core technical experts, let's say it's 10 or 15 people from the organization, but then eliminate all of the operational redundancy. Right. And that's where it's starting to go. So, you look at the Meta layoffs, and a lot of that was around duplication of product management, sales, admin functions within the AI division. So what you start to find is as AI becomes more sophisticated and it narrows organizational structures, like we've seen with Amazon today, laying off 14,000 people because it says it wants to try and flatten the organizational structure. Not the 30,000 it was originally rumored to be, but 14,000. But you start to see that flattening come through. Now, what that's doing in terms of this radical delayering of traditional businesses is that it's going to place more emphasis on the AI tools to deliver more efficiencies. And that starts to become a virtuous cycle, is that people need AI to get better because it flattens organizations, and then to flatten it, you need to become even better. So it's going to keep operating in that way.
To pull on that thread of flattening the organization, it's interesting, right? Because historic job ladders have been, you do great as an individual contributor, and often you get thrust into a management role. Whether it's for you or not is a different conversation. But as these management layers decline, and has been a rapid decline in manager roles, and as to your point, a lot of firms are actually getting rid of them. What does that mean for the traditional career ladder, do you think?
It's gone. The 20-year career ladder has collapsed and has been confined to history, along with the tuning in of radio and TV sets.
It's crazy, right? Because what do you do, right? Like you're like you kind of ambitions to be a leader or whatever, get to the thing, and the classic is get your head down, whatever, work hard, make some moves, get up. And so it's going to be very interesting to see. And I think maybe you'll see people, they're in big firms, maybe they go to startups, maybe they, it's going to be a bit more of a, there's this thing. I read an article in The Economist a while ago about the crab career. And, like, it's not, maybe you have to go across to go up to go, it's not going to be just a linear route anymore.
Exactly. It's more about deepening expertise, looking at expanding come back to that T model before. So, deepen everything that you can with your own expertise, but have that outward looking approach at where do different AI tools come in on the periphery. And that's where you'll add a lot more value. So if you're looking at employment security, that's the way that, something I'd be looking at is that T-shaped model. When we look at high performers, I think what they're going to be doing are very much making that decision between specialist tracks. So do they want deep technical mastery or strategic tracks? Do they want, complex problem solving, stakeholder navigation and communication? But ultimately, the bit that's going to get squeezed is that traditional middle management. That's the bit where the ladder has just gone now.
Yeah, crazy. I think just keep collecting experiences. Do the kind of chapter thing, just like your career is long. Try stuff, all of that. You never quite know how it's going to go. Try these new technologies, learn stuff. It's hard to long-term plan a career.
Yeah, so, definitely.
Cool. Henry, thank you so much. Good for you to join me. Appreciate it. Good to hear your insights.
My great pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.